खंडमंडलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्परं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनं शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वर गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति शांति शांति। So here we are, friends. I'm going to start with a little story that comes from a tradition which, well, comes from Tibet, but in ancient times we had this tradition in India of a group of people who were called avadutas. I don't know if you... The avadutas are a set of people who look crazy to all intents and purposes, but they think that we are crazy, so-called normal beings. So anyway, now this is from a particular tradition called the Dzogchen. This story is from the Dzogchen tradition. Now if you pronounce Dzogchen, you want to write it in English, you have to start with a D, A, B, C, D, and then add a Z to it, and Dzogchen. It doesn't matter. So, this comes from one of the earliest schools of Buddhism, which is the Nyingma school. They call the Yellow Hats, founded in Tibet by a great person who was not from Tibet, but from a small little village on the borders of India and Afghanistan, in those days called Udyan. And his name was, I'm sure some of you know, Padmasambhava. Who said that? Padmasambhava, which means Padma is a lotus, and Sambhava is someone who appeared in the lotus. The happening of the Padma. Okay. So, Dzogchen tradition comes from that, but it's a little outside the completely ceremonial and tantric ways of Vajrayana Buddhism. It's more closer to the teachings of the Avadutas. So I'm going to tell you a story from this, because we need to have a background on what we are going to do. Not just breathe in and out. I mean, this is Kriya, there's some things there, of course, but what are we expecting from this? Is good health? Yeah, okay. Body health? Mind health? Is that all? Or something beyond? So we are going to that which is something beyond now, so that you have an idea. Well, physical health, mental health, they're all important parts of Kriya. Look at me sitting here. Physically, I'm 70 years old. Just before coming to India, my doctor wanted to have a thorough medical examination. So he took my this, that, ECG, and so on. And I said, how is the ECG? He said, it's like 35 years. I said, thank you. I was expecting him to say 17 years, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So, this is one of the effects of Kriya, but there are many. Kriya is not for that. It's much more than that. Yeah, the story. There was a disciple of a Zen master who was a disciple for 20 years. Now this has a certain impact on what I'm going to teach you, because there are people who take Kriya and after 1 year ask me, nothing is happening. So I don't know what they expect to happen, but nothing is happening. So here was a disciple who was a disciple for 20 years of this Zen master. Well, he could calm his mind and so on and so forth. But the breakthrough, the spiritual breakthrough which he was expecting was not happening. So every day as I went for a walk, he would ask the master, nothing is happening. What is Dzogchen? Now, Dzogchen, the meaning of the word means, what do you call that? What did Buddha experience? What did Ramakrishna? Yeah, so that's clear, right? Okay. So, enlightenment. Sometimes when I fish for answers, it's good to come from there. So, enlightenment. So I'm not getting enlightened. What is going on? I'm 20 years. So the first the master said, then go away. He said, no, I won't go away. Stuck on. And then one day the master called him and said, come here. You see a sack out there, you know what a sack is, S-A-C-K. Bring me the sack. I said, okay. There's a lot of bricks and rubbish and stones lying around. Pick them all. Okay? Put them into the sack. He said, keep putting them more and more and more. And then it became so heavy. So then tie it up. Okay? Sometimes these teachers make you do terrible things. If you've studied the story of Milarepa, who was made to build and break his house 4 times, we are not going to do that. So he filled all the brick bats and this rubbish into the bag and tied it up. And then he said, now put it on your shoulders. He said, but master, I said, put it on your shoulders. So he put it on his shoulder. And there was a hill there. And the master said, climb yonder hill and go to the top. So he climbed slowly, with great difficulty. It took him quite some time to reach the peak, the top. And there was nothing there except a single tree spreading its branches. He was puffing and panting, and there was this sack. And the master happily on a horse climbed up the hill and came back. He looked at him and he said, Master, now what? I can't hold it anymore. He said, okay, throw it down. So he threw it down. And then he went and sat under the tree in the shade and said, my God. Then he said, I got it. You know what I mean? So basically, to throw away the loads and rubbish that we have gathered, not only in this life, but for many lives, if you believe in that. If you haven't, it's okay, at least in this life. And the heavy weight which has been stuffed into our heads by society, I should do this, I should be like, the only way to free yourself from these impurities and heaviness is by deciding, today I'm going to throw it off. And then you have kind of opened the door, and then it's not over. While the door is open, you may refuse to go in. Because to throw everything that you have gathered over, please, I'm not talking about your car or your house, the mind. All that you have gathered over the years should be like this. To throw it off is like descending into a bottomless pit. So even if the door is open, nobody wants to move. Go back. That means you are not ready for Dzogchen, not ready for enlightenment. Well, some rare beings step in, and then they go along the path and reach the goal. The interesting thing about this goal that we are looking for is not something far away. That's very interesting to note. And it doesn't come only to some special individuals. Why? Because it is everywhere. So if it's everywhere, why don't we feel it? Because we are not ready and prepared for it. Regarding this reality, true reality, as opposed to what we think is the reality. For us, this is reality. Okay, it is, because I need to see that this is high and the floor is low before I walk. Otherwise I might fall down real. Okay. But the question that has been asked for centuries, is this really the reality or is it something other than this? So, I'll tell you how Kriya and other meditative practices are connected to it. Please don't think that Kriya is the only way. Please, let's make it clear from the beginning. There are many ways, the approaches are many, because what we are looking at is infinite. And if it is infinite, there must be infinite ways of going there. But Kriya is my tradition, that's a different matter. So, regarding this towards which you are moving or want to move through Kriya or other practices, the Upanishads, the ancient Upanishads, which are the sum and substance of the ancient wisdom of the Vedas, which are probably among the oldest textbooks on wisdom available to us. Well, they were not available in book form, they were learned by rote. Somebody told, the other guy picked up and chanted it till it was put in writing. I think several years it was just learned by rote. Nobody wrote it. R-O-T-E wrote, not W-R-O-T. So, these Upanishads are a treasure trove of wisdom which shows where you stand, what is reality, how do you approach it, where is it far or is it near, where is this reality, and also that once you touch it, you're free. Everybody seeks freedom in some way. You keep a little child in your room, even a small child who knows nothing about philosophy, put him in the room, give him everything he wants or she wants. You can't keep him for more than an hour inside. You want to come out. Everybody wants freedom of some way. Husband wants to be free from the wife. I'm sorry, this subject is not a good subject. So everybody wants freedom. But we never seem to get this freedom because it's not in physical terms. Freedom is a metaphysical and spiritual fact. It's not something physical. And you touch that freedom, you can be free even in the midst of all bondage. So, according to this truth, which after I said something, everybody is very interested now. So, as we, this truth, what we seek through Kriya or other means, is defined very beautifully in one of the Upanishads. There are many Upanishads, out of which there are 11 Upanishads, which are the principal Upanishads. Why are they called the principal Upanishads? Because all the great teachers in India wrote commentaries on them. Adi, starting with Shankara, Adi Shankara, and so on. Everybody wrote commentaries on them. These are the 11 principal Upanishads. Out of which there is one Upanishad which is very small, which is only 20 verses among them. There's another one which is only 12, but there are 20 verses. And it is a beautiful Upanishad. It starts like this. You don't have to by heart this now. Isha Vashyamidam Sarvam. It's called the Isha Vashya Upanishad. Isha Vashyamidam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat, which means that supreme reality that you seek, or which some don't seek, is Isha. Isha is the supreme being. Isha Vashyamidam Sarvam. That supreme reality pervades everything here. Pervades, P-E-R-V-A-D-E-S, which means there is not a single place or situation or space where it is not. It pervades everywhere. Yatkincha jagatyam jagat. It pervades the entire jagat, which is the universe, which is called jagat because it is derived from the Sanskrit word Jagatyam, which means move, that which moves. The world, the universe is called Jagat because it's Jagatyam. It's that which constantly moves. There is nothing that does not move. Think about this. Let's look at this. Is there anything that doesn't move? Tell me. You would say, well, the microphone is not moving because then you won't be talking properly. Well, if you ask a physicist, he would tell you that there is a lot of movement going on inside, which we don't see with our ordinary eyes. There's a lot of movement going on. And if you look at the physical objects, the earth is moving, right? The Milky Way itself is moving. Time is moving, we know that. Right? Once upon a time I had black hair, now I have grey hair. Time is moving. What about mind? You don't have to ask. Always moving, never stops, never still. So everything is in constant motion. Time moves because my master, Maheshwarnath Babaji, used to tell me that when you eat your food, remember, time is eating you. Yeah, it never stops. We know the saying, time and tide waits for no man. Also woman. So, that which moves. So the entire universe, atoms, molecules, day, night, human life, everything is in constant flux, in movement. Because it moves, the word move in Sanskrit is Jagatya. So it's called Jagat. Right. So, if everything is moving, the question the Upanishad asks is there something that is motionless, which is no movement? That which pervades everything that moves is understood when you touch that point which is absolute quietness, which has no time, which has no movement, which has no death, which has no old age. That is the point. The good news is it's also in us. It's not as if you need to find it there, you can find it here. Now, after saying that this all-pervading Supreme Being is everywhere, Upanishad makes another statement which is diametrically opposite to what we normally think. It says, let go and rejoice. Tena tyaktena panjita. Normally we feel to rejoice means to gather. Gather material things, or gather knowledge, or gather spiritual things. You know what I mean? The Upanishad says, Tena tyaktena, let go and rejoice. It's opposite to what we normally think. We are taught from childhood, gather, gather, gather. Let's get to a simple, concrete example. I'm single, I'm not. Example. I'm single, and I think by gathering one partner of mine, I will become happy. It's normal. Now I'm single, I say, oh, I'm happy, but not being able to share my thoughts, so I need a partner. So I look for someone and I feel now I have fulfilled myself. Have I? Well, you can ask it. If you have, okay, that's fine. Then there's no need of Kriya, Moksha, nothing. Right? And the same thing can happen the other way. I'm happily married and I think I have to free myself from this. All the time, I want to be single. Gathering singleness, I call it. And am I happy? No, because soon I find one more person from somewhere. Endless, which means what? That anything that you gather from the outside world is not going to give us complete satisfaction or fulfillment. Let's put it, fulfillment. There's something nice, uh, you must have heard of TM, uh, Transcendental Meditation, started by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Many people don't know the fact that his first lesson started in Madanapalli, where I live. He had come as an attendant to a person who was in the TB sanatorium, tuberculosis sanatorium, looking after him. And one day he called all the educated citizens of Madanapalli, and he drew a line with a chalk, and he said, all married people stand on that side, and all unmarried people stand on this side. And then when I say 1, 2, 3, those who are not satisfied with their current status step across. Everybody steps. These went this side, the other went that side. So it's not a solution, you know what I mean. Solution doesn't lie in this or that, it's internal. So we are always constantly seeking this completeness. Okay, another example. Suppose I don't have a car, let's say. Or I have a small car, very small, little car. After a while I'm not so happy with it. I want to have a new car. I work very hard, I beg, borrow, may not steal, but and then I buy myself a beautiful Mercedes or whatever, BMW. And then I'm fully happy, satisfied. Yeah, okay, I am actually. For the time being, until I see my neighbor come with a Rolls Royce into the garage. Okay. Then I buy a Rolls Royce. I have my own problems. The taxman wants more money, and so on and so forth. Although I enjoy driving, let's say. Now, when I have my Rolls, need not be a silver ghost, any Rolls, in my garage, I feel now I'm happy and settled because I have a Rolls in my garage. The ancient yogis and rishis who carefully researched into the matter of the mind said, hey, wait a minute, is it really that you're happy and the mind is calm and tranquil? Is it really because you have a car in the garage? Or is it that for a short period you've stopped craving? Which is the thing? See, till I got the car, I was craving constantly. So the mind was reaching out, it was not satisfied. I got it, and then the mind stops craving. When it stops craving, I feel very happy. The yogi said, we can do it even in the beginning without the roles, nowhere in the picture. You stop craving and you're happy. The mind has settled down. The settled down, tranquil mind, I'm trying to connect it to practices. The settled down, quiet mind is the tarmac from which you take off to the ultimate reality. This is essential first. You can't do it otherwise. You're still agitated, you're still running around here and there. You cannot really fix your attention on that which is beyond. The tarmac, the takeoff point is when the mind becomes quiet and calm and tranquil. The Gita calls it Sthita Prajna. Which means when the mind is quiet and tranquil, it doesn't depend on what other people think, but rather what I feel. You know how our lives are. If somebody calls me, it's a roller coaster ride actually. If somebody says I'm a wise man, I'm on cloud 9. If somebody says I'm a fool, then I'm down, depression. Depression is the latest thing now. Maximum pharmaceutical companies make money making drugs for depression. Why? Because, oh, he said that I was a fool, so I'm down. Wait a minute, man. What happened to you? Nothing. Somebody said something. I went into a party and they didn't recognize me, so I'm down. Somebody said, I'm a wise man, so I'm floating high. This is our life. Up, down, roller coaster. Does it really matter? The Gita has a beautiful saying, Tulya ninda stutirmani, which means the wise man or the wise person is one who considers praise and insult as equal. Doesn't care really. Well, you can draw some valuable lessons from politicians, but that's a different story. I'm talking about yogis. No matter what others say, we do what we have to do. It's also part of karma yoga. So, suppose you call me a fool. Suppose. And I don't know English, what happens? It's that I load the word with what I understand, and then suppose I know only Hindi, I might think you're calling me a fool, a flower, be on cloud nine. It's my mind state, you see. It's how I concoct ideas from words. So why are we talking about that? Where did we start from? Why did we bring this in? Yeah. Also, there's something, just before I started this subject, I discussed something. I called it Sthita Prajna. And I said it's the tarmac from which you need to take off. What was that? A quiet, tranquil mind. Okay. From here, now we have been discussing Vedanta, the Upanishads. Upanishads teach you how to find the truth. Okay. Whatever it is, let's not define it right now. As opposed to what we think is the truth. We have this asato ma sadgamaya, take me from the unreal to the real. You say, but well, this is all real. Wait a minute, we are coming to that. There's another Upanishad. We need to go into this before we go into practices and sadhana. Have you, any of you, gone through or started reading or know about the existence of a textbook on yoga, which is called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali? Yeah? Or Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now some people call it Ashtanga Yoga. Nowhere in the Yoga Sutras does Patanjali refer to it as Ashtanga Yoga. In fact, he calls it Kriya Yoga. If you have read it, the first chapter deals with consciousness and the mind, and the second chapter, called the sadhana pada, or the practice, begins by saying that what I'm going to teach is Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. This is how it starts. But it's called Ashtanga Yoga because it has 8 limbs of practice. Even though Patanjali doesn't use the word, it has 8 steps. So it's called Ashta Anga. Anga meaning limbs. Limbs. Now, in this textbook, I think it's one, but then they are called Yoga Sutras. A sutra is an aphorism. An aphorism needs to be interpreted because it's all put together in such tightly edited terms that someone who knows it needs to explain what it means. So there are many Vyasa's commentary and so on. Now, Patanjali, while trying to define yoga, please, yoga is not just standing on your head, please understand. Well, that's part of yoga, but it's not just that. In fact, last year I had gone to the headquarters of the WHO in Geneva, and they said, we need a topic on yoga. I said, first they said yoga asanas. I said, can we change the topic? Yoga beyond asanas. Asanas are good, of course. Not in Malayalam. Asanas are wonderful postures. We'll come to that slowly as we go into Kriya. So, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Patanjali himself defines yoga this way. He says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga is the Nirodha of the vrittis of the chitta. Oh, I'm not talking English. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga is the Nirodha of the vrittis of the chitta. So, if you translate it literally, it means yoga is the abandoning of all the distractions of the mind stuff. Vrittis are the distractions, impurity you can call them, but basically distractions and conflicts. And chitta is the mind which carries these, and nirodha is getting rid of these distractions. So when the mind is rid of these distractions, or not these distractions, of distractions, when there is no conflict in the mind, when the mind is free of, you know how the mind is, I want to look here but my mind is wandering. So can I get rid of these distractions? When this happens, the mind becomes absolutely quiet. I'm not saying thoughtless. There are lots of people who say, I'm trying to make my mind thoughtless. It's not happening. Your mind cannot become thoughtless. It can. You don't need to practice yoga for that. Hit your head with a crowbar. Absolutely quiet. As long as you are conscious, you cannot be thoughtless. Anyway, so when the mind is free of all distractions, when there is only pure awareness of existence, that I exist, it can't go. If I say, I have no thoughts, who is saying it? Right? I'm there. But we're looking for this I which is free of distraction, which is merely a witness, which is not involved in any of the free. When this happens, then you take off to the higher levels of consciousness. Because you've freed yourself from this and you're going into that. In fact, a mind without distractions has already touched the silence of the truth, already begun. You'll say, why begun? Because when it's complete, then there are no more distractions, no matter what you're doing, where you are, or what you're saying. At the beginning, that's not possible. You need to free yourself. Because then you recognize the true witness being yourself and not what is involved or the mind is involved in. So, this understanding of the, what did you say? Something?
No.
Okay.
No, but I was just curious, how do you not have distraction while simultaneously have thoughts?
So,
Thoughts to distraction.
so that's the practice. So, the thing is, the mind cannot be left unoccupied. You might have noticed this. So you need to first occupy it with something internal to free it from that which is outside. And the second step is to free yourself even from that. So, okay. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful textbook on theory and practice. Why? Because apparently it was taught on a battlefield. So people are, oh, how can somebody teach something when the battle is going on? This battlefield is our everyday life. Believe me, that battlefield is one, this battlefield is another. It's our everyday life. So the first chapter of the Gita begins with Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's confusion, yoga of Arjuna's sorrow, yoga of Arjuna's insecurity. It's a Sanskrit word, so it requires many words to explain. Vishada, insecurity, sorrow, helplessness, uncertainty. I think it's such an important text because I think at some point in our life, if not always, we are on that position. We are in that position. We don't know what to do next. How do I step forward? Where am I? And then it goes on different chapters. Why I wanted to say this is, and it has 18 chapters. And if you need to reach the 18th hole, then you need to be very careful. You don't get it by brute force, it's an art. Right? Can you play golf by brute force, please? It's an art, right? And absolute attention. When you hit the ball, do you go like this or look at the ball all the time? In fact, I'm thinking that we should write a book called Yoga and the Art of Golf or something like that. Everybody's writing books nowadays. So, 18 holes. Well, we don't need the 19th watering hole. Yeah. So, at the end of every chapter of the Gita, there's a beautiful statement. It connects to what we were thinking just now. It says, let me say this in Sanskrit because I like to hear it myself. Nice. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So, this is the Bhagavad Gita. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So, Upanishad. So, it is the teaching of the Upanishad. And what does Upanishad teach? Brahma Vidyayam, the knowledge of the Supreme Truth. What is the next sentence? Yoga Sastry. And then Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvada and so on. Yoga Sastri, which means to understand the Brahma Vidya taught by the Upanishad, you also need the Yoga Shastra. Simply by saying this world is an illusion, it will not turn into an illusion. It's real before us. Simply by saying I am the Brahman, you don't become the Brahman. You can hypnotize yourself to think so, but you don't, really. I am the Brahman, but somebody calls me a fool, I'm agitated. Why? So you need a practice by which the mind, which can only be sensitive to gross objects and the senses, objects of the senses, begins to understand how to experience the subtle layers of the mind. You can't suddenly break it and jump. You need a practice by which your mind subsides, everything is quiet, and then from there you step up. In this state of agitation and the distractions that we have and unfulfilled desires, we cannot hope to reach the calmness of mind by which you can touch that which is beyond. That requires Yoga Shastra. So therefore, the sadhana or the practice is an important part of preparing the mind. You can call it the brain if you like, to understand things which are beyond the ordinary understanding of the five senses. Now, we have to get to this. Isn't it enough to live in this world with our five senses? Why should we seek something more? The answer is obvious, because we are not fully satisfied with anything. And it goes on and on till we die. And after we die, we don't know if we are alive to understand. We don't know. I might think something else, but generally. I don't know. I'm lying down straight and there's a plaque on the side which says R.I.P., rest in peace. Peace comes only then when everything is over. We hope. We don't know if someone is there to experience the peace. But so we are saying, can we find that peace? Not the graveyard, while we are still here, still living in this world. We cannot run away from this world. Where will you run away? To the cave? In the Himalayas? Unfortunately, there are hardly any caves left in the Himalayas. And when you run away, can you leave your mind behind and run away? You carry your mind. Even from practical purposes, nowadays it's become very difficult to find a place of solitude. I think the best solitude is your own bedroom. Put up a board, don't disturb me. If the house is on fire, don't call me, or something like that. I must say this very interesting thing. This is about many years ago, when I was 20, 21, even those days. I was in Rishikesh and there was this young man from my state, from Kerala, very religious boy, nice boy. He used to have a lot of markings on his sandalwood, ashes. Nice boy. So one day he came to me and said, I'm fed up of this Rishikesh. I said, why? What happened? There are too many loudspeakers and and all kinds. Tourists are coming from Delhi and okay, so relax. So what is it? Well, I want to go away somewhere and stay alone. Ashramas are full of foreigners. I said, okay, so what do you propose to do? He said, I know there's a cave in Lakshman Jhula. There's a place called Lakshman Jhula, close to Rishikesh, if you've been. There's a cave there, so I'm going there. I said, okay, good luck, Godspeed, and I sent him off. We went there. He was not seen for 3-4 days, so I thought maybe he's at peace, sitting there. On the 4th day, I see him back, fuming. I said, what happened? He said, oh, you won't believe this. I was sitting happily in the tree. And then, of course, I was feeling hungry and I was thinking what to do and so on, but I was okay. And then I had a vision. I thought I had a vision. But there was a guy standing there wearing helmets and tubes. I thought an extraterrestrial has come, having mercy on me, to take me in the Pushpa Vimana upstairs. So I put my hands together and said, brother, so where have you come from? He said, I come from the municipality. I'm praying for mosquitoes in the cave. So, this is the state. Where will we run? Well, if anybody wants to go to India and live in a nice place, ashrams are nice places, but a little noisy. I would suggest there's a beautiful place a little away from Rishikesh called Glass House on the Ganges. Very nice. You can stay on it, it's quite down and there's nobody there. Well, you have to pay for it because it's a resort kind of. But it's nice. Anyway. Which means if you go to some ashram, you're allowed to chant only Om Namo Narayana. If you go to another ashram, you can only chant Om Namah Shivaya. But if you're in the glass house on the Ganga, you can chant both, nobody minds. So, anyway, so why did I say this? What I meant was, for solitude, wherever you go, you carry your mind with you. Mind, you can't leave it behind. So, we are saying that this solitude can be found within oneself. No matter where we are, if we learn how to quieten the mind, make it tranquil. And if you have a spot in your home which is free of disruptions and distractions, is more than enough. Of course, short periods of going to the Himalayas are a must because it's beautiful. I still want to go whenever I get a chance, but don't get caught up in the tourist muddle. Be free. Walk if possible. So, having said that, is there a way to do this? While we are still here, in Australia, in Melbourne, is there a way to live in solitude? Yes. If your mind can be made quiet, then there is solitude. Right here. Now there is the other question. Well, I think the world is real, so I don't want to find any other reality. Okay. We'll deal with that a little bit. Why have the rishis said, asato ma sadgamaya, take me from that which is unreal to the real? There must be some reason. How do we experience this world? How? Simple. It's not a very... Through the five senses? Yes. Huh? Yeah. Now, these five senses, are they really reliable? This is the question. Of course, there are some relatively reliable, but are they really reliable? Every morning, we see the sunrise, right? Every evening, we see the sunset. If a high school boy or a girl would tell you that the sun neither rises nor sets. No, uncle, the sun doesn't rise. Why? Because it's the earth that moves. Okay? But what do you see with your eyes? The sun rises and the sun sets. How reliable are my senses? Even a simple thing like that. So, what we are trying to say is the world is not what we think it is, and as we see it, we only know the world through the images given to the mind through the senses. We are not really in contact with the world. If you're really in contact with the essence of the world, it's the same as the ultimate essence. There is no difference, but we are not. We only have the image given to us by our senses and then registered in my brain, and the mind makes a blueprint of my rational understanding of the object. I have no other way to look at an object. Even psychologically, when Jennifer says she's communicating with me, sorry, I don't mean that way, communicating with me, and I say I communicate with Jennifer, it means she already has an image about me, right? I have an image about her, right? Yes, we all have. And the communication is between her image of mine and my image of hers. There is no communication, really. I'm not stating a fact, okay? Example. So, is there a communication which is beyond images? This is the question. Can reality be actually found through the sense organs? Or, there is a reality, of course, no question. But what we know is only the image of the reality given to us. Okay, one part, keep it aside, think about it, you might come up with questions later. The other part, this is from the Upanishads. There is a wonderful little Upanishad which has only 12 slokas, the Mandukya Upanishad. The Mandukya Upanishad has only 12 slokas, only 12, 12 stanzas. It doesn't tell you what to do, what not to do. It doesn't tell you whether you should this or that, what rules to follow. It just discusses threadbare the different states of consciousness which is common to all human beings. What are these states which are common to all human beings? I think you have read a lot and seen the videos and YouTube. So, what are the states? This is supposed waking. How many of you? Are you all awake? Okay. So, waking state, then dream state, common to all of us, no matter where we come from, which nation or whatever, man or woman, young or old, we all wake up, we all have dreams, and we all sometimes sleep deep without dreams. You can't differentiate people on that, everybody has. Okay. Now, waking state, we think we understand. We don't, but at least let's say that we understand the waking state. Now comes the dream state. All of us dream. Dream in the night, also daydream. Both. Now what happens in a dream? I'm just looking at the reality. What we think is real and whether it's true, can we put a little question mark out there? We have a dream. And in the dream, there's a tiger chasing us. Or a large oversized kangaroo, whatever, chasing us. And we're running. And then I wake up. I'm still looking, where's the tiger? He's not there, okay. I'm still palpitating and sweating because it's so real. But then I wake up and I say, oh, it was a dream. Doesn't matter. Thinking that now I'm in reality, waking state. The question is, while in the dream, you would never believe it's a dream, right? It's a reality. It's only when you wake up. Rarely sometimes one wakes up in a dream, but it's very rare. When you wake up, wow, it's a dream, it's not real. What if sometime in this state, I might be going through a long dream. I won't believe it if somebody says it now, because like in the dream, I won't believe it's a dream because I'm dreaming. Maybe one day I'll wake up, stretch my hands and say, oh my God, what a terrible or lovely, depending on dream. Long dream, but could be. Just give it a thought. Could be. Don't even accept it. Could be. Suspend your judgment. So the Upanishad says, if the waking state is relative to the dream, and if the dream state is relative to the waking state, both the states are not absolute because they are relative to each other. Okay. Now there's another state which is called deep sleep. Now in deep sleep, we are not aware of anything. We're not dreaming, we're not awake, we can't recognize the world, and we don't recognize anything inside. There's no cognition inside or outside in deep sleep. And one more thing interesting, that in deep sleep we are all equal. The chairman of the company and the man who works in the factory both go to sleep. And in sleep nobody is a chairman or a worker, they're all the same. Deep sleep. Only when you wake up you're conscious of that. Everybody sleeps, and sleep is so essential. If there was no sleep, we would have gone mad. Why is it such a necessity? Because there you sink all your differences. There's nothing. You don't even know who you are for the time being. And if I don't recognize who I am, as society says I am, I'm already relaxed. In deep sleep, I don't need somebody to recognize me. I don't feel hurt if somebody doesn't, because I don't know. And it's such a wonderful thing. Everything is suspended. I am in bliss. But I don't realize it at that point. Right? In deep sleep, I am not aware. But when I wake up, there's some entity who says, that was a blissful sleep. So there has been an entity, but the entity was not aware at that moment. In the waking, this is why it's so blissful. In fact, in in some textbooks it's called Swarga, heaven. In the Gayatri you have Bhu, Bhuva, Suva. Bhu is the waking state, Bhuva is the dream state, and Suva, which is a short form of Swarga, is deep sleep, heaven. Now, this is the reason why in the night after deep sleep, even if I have 5 alarms ringing, I don't want to wake up. Why? I'm in bliss, complete bliss. And when I wake up, I say, oh, I had a blissful sleep. So there's an entity there. Now imagine a state where in deep sleep, the recognizing entity wakes up and says, this is called Turiya, according to Upanishads. Unfortunately, it's not possible to attain Turiya through deep sleep. Then it would have been very easy. It has to be experienced while you're awake in the Jagrata Avastha. When it is experienced in the waking state, then you know it even when you're deeply asleep. That sleep has a different quality altogether because you're aware of it, of that blissfulness. Aware without your conditionings. Now, the ordinary mind, the ordinary brain cannot understand or touch this. It happens perhaps when the ordinary mind has ceased all conflict, has ceased all distractions, and is absolutely quiet. Now it can happen in many ways. It need not happen through a technique. In rare instances, we all experience it sometime when we see suddenly something beautiful and are fully absorbed in it. There are no distractions. I'm listening to beautiful music. There's no distraction. I'm looking after my little baby, fully absorbed. There are no distractions. We get glimpses of it in life. But the ultimate glimpse is what we are looking for. You can't even explain what it is. Even in ordinary biological, physical love, there are 2 young people standing at the bus stop, looking at each other. Nobody knows what's happening. What are you doing? Oh, nothing. We are looking at each other. Can you explain it, define it? No. In Hindi, we had a movie, so kuch kuch hota hai. We don't know what hota hai. Kya ho raha hai? Which means something is happening, is what it's translated. We don't know what's happening. So this is ordinary love. So imagine that. In its ultimate essence, what happens. Now that kind of love is called bhakti in the literature, where one is not worried about oneself, one is only that, wants only that, absorbed in that. Now look at music, it's so beautiful. There's an old story. Have you found this, have you realized, have all of us realized, that you cannot think without a language? Think about it carefully. Don't say, yes, I can, and so on. Just when you think, you're already formulating in some language with which you're very familiar with, probably from birth. I know lots of people here speak very good English and so on, but when you are seriously thinking, then you think, oh, kya kaha? So, children are in a better state than us. They're just learning. So they're still not so crystallized, Anyway. So, which is good if we can be like a child at some point, but it's not so easy to do that. So, language. There's an old story in the Old Testament. It's called the Tower of Babel. I'm sure some of you must have read Tower of Babel. There was this great king Nimrod who decided that he would make a tower so tall that when you would go to the top of the tower and hit an arrow, it would go and hit God's footstool. Very ambitious man. I don't think there's anybody today in this world who is so ambitious as Nimrod. So he built this long, huge, tall tower and he went up. Now, when you build a tower like that, you need people from all sides, from all countries, all languages. But then there was only one language. Anyway, he went up to the terrace and shot the arrow. It was taller than Burj Khalifa. Shot the arrow went and hit God's footstool. And God decided that this guy his tail has to get cut now. If all humanity begins to think this way, what's going to happen to the world? So what did he do? You know how it would destroy? Suddenly everybody, each one of the workers started talking in a different language. Each couldn't understand what the other was saying. There was a big fight and the whole thing collapsed. So this is why it's called the Tower of Babel. When you can't understand what somebody is saying, you say, what's he babbling about? So we can't think without it. However, fortunately for us, there is something which does not need language, which is music without lyrics, pure music. If you hear the symphonies of Beethoven or Mozart or something, irrespective of where you go from or where you come from, which language you speak, you enjoy it. When Krishna played the flute in Vrindavan, the gopis were just stunned. They didn't know what's going on. They only heard the music. Which is why when you're very agitated, when you listen to beautiful music, your mind calms down. Because there is no thought process involved. There is no language. There are no words. It's beyond words. So music is a beautiful link between this and that, which is outside the structure of thought. So therefore, when you hear beautiful music, sometimes you get a flash of that understanding where the mind is still and there is joy. Now, the yoga sadhanas or the practices prescribed in yoga are meant to bring about this stillness through practices, and they're also connected in some way to the endocrine system in our body, which is called the ductless glands, starting from the pituitary down. And that's the speciality of yoga. It's not just physical exercise. Yes, it is in some way, but it's more than that. It connects with, it makes the organs, the ductless glands, which we all possess, function in a particular way so that you move from ordinary thought to that which is beyond. Let me explain. 60 or 70 years ago, I'm 70 now, that means when I was 1 year old, I was not aware, but that's what I read. There's a little ductless gland quite close to the pituitary, which is called the pineal gland. A tiny little thing, shaped like a green chili in India. We have a little thing there. 70 years ago, it was thought to be a vestige organ. You know what's a vestige organ? Like the vermiform appendix that you have. They said it has no function. Then why is it there? We don't know. It's an accident of nature. So in the same way they thought that the pineal gland was a vestige organ. It had no known function. Till then. Then another 10 years passed, and then the scientists discovered, the neurologists and the biologists discovered that it's a very important organ. It has a very important function. And what is its function? It coordinates and controls the sleep cycle. What are uh, the doctor, the medical person would call the circadian rhythm, waking and sleeping rhythm. The pineal gland contains a hormone called melatonin. So when melatonin, a little bit of melatonin flows into the blood, when you want to sleep, you feel beautifully. And it happens when everything is dark, the lights are switched off, a little bit of melatonin goes into your system, and then you feel sleep. This took some time for them to make up. Believe me, in many ways, even meditation and feeling good is chemical. If there is enough dopamine or any one of these things in your system, you feel very nice. And there are yogic ways to bring this about. So this was discovered later. So when you have jet lag, what happens is the circadian rhythm is disturbed. So you go to the doctor. And the doctor says, pop a pill of melatonin and you're okay. There are internal ways of adjusting, of course, without melatonin, which I do regularly because I keep traveling all the time. Now what I want to say is, 100 years ago, the great yogi Swami Vivekananda declared that perhaps the pineal gland is the stem of the Sahasrara chakra, the 1,000-petal lotus. How did he know? How could he understand something which was considered to be a vestige organ and was known only very late? He has other ways of understanding, other ways of knowledge, which is not based on empirical realities. So, in this way, there are many such organs in our system, especially what we call chakras. What we discussed today is a very important part, so that you have a clear-cut idea of what we are doing and where we are going. Yeah? Before I wind up this session, let me tell you that there are different approaches to find the reality. It can be done sometimes through devotion, through sharp minds can probably touch it through understanding. But if you need something systematic, step by step, where you can stop and examine and move forward, then yoga is important. Now, from yoga, Kriya Yoga is one of the branches of yoga which has come down to me from a certain tradition. But please remember that there are people who may be practicing something else, some other kind of Kriya or some other path. Don't think that I am superior to this because I am doing Babaji's Kriya. Nothing like that. Of course, it's my tradition, so I would defend it. It's a wonderful practice. So whichever way you approach the reality, it might help you to move forward. That's all I can say. Humbly. Okay. Thank you.